Good evening, everyone. In today's session, we are going to understand how to integrate Spring Boot with Redis cache. Right. So as of now, we developed several applications. Our Spring Boot application will be available here and database will be available here. So we are able to establish communication from Spring Boot application with the database by using data JPA. Now we need to understand that in the database, there are two types of tables will be available. There are two types of tables will be available in the database. The first one is called as transactional table. First one is called as transactional table. Okay. And the second one is called as non-transactional tables. Transactional tables, non-transactional tables. Sir, what is the difference between transactional table and a non-transactional table? Transactional table means our application will perform create operation, update operation, delete operation, and select operation. If our project is trying to perform create, update, and delete operations on the table, then that table is called as transactional table. For example, user details in the application. User can create the new account. User can create the new account. User can update his name. User can update his profile. Like this, a table will be available. In that table, our application is going to perform all the CRUD operations. Got my point? Creating the new user, updating the existing user, deleting the user, and retrieving the user. If our application is performing such a kind of operations on the table, then that application is called as a transactional table. Then what about non-transactional table? Non-transactional table, nothing but our application will perform only select operation on the table. Application is not going to insert the data or update the data or delete the data. Application will only read the data from the table. For example, if you take a table with the name called country master, okay, countries are not going to change. That is a static data. From last 5 years, if you see, or next 5 years also, the country names are not going to modify. The country codes also not going to modify. So our application will only read the data from the country table. So any table that is only used for reading the data is called as non-transactional table. If any table in that our application performing read write operations, then the table is called as transactional table. Are you clear? Now here in my database, two types of tables will be available, transactional tables as well as non-transactional table. Now here for transactional tables, every time our application should communicate with the database tables, right? Application should communicate with the database to perform the operations, update the data, retrieve the data, delete the data, whatever it is. For example, non-transactional table is available. If you retrieve the data 100 times, you will get the same data. If the data is the same, why we need to communicate with that table every time? Unnecessarily, it will decrease performance of our application. For example, if you go to our website, shokaitech.com website is available. In this website, we have a registration page, guys. When you click on register page, it will load the country names and the country codes. It will load the country names and country codes. Here, if you click on the register button, I need to get the data from the database to display the drop down. And from other location, other person also clicked on the register button. Again, I need to get the data from the database. If 1,000 users are opening my registration page, 1,000 queries, 1,000 times I need to execute the query to get the data. If I execute the query 1,000 times also, data is the same. There is no difference in the data. When the data is same, why we need to get the data again and again from the database, which will reduce performance of the application. So that's where in the real time, for our applications, we are going to create a cache. For our applications, we are going to create a cache. So some data we will take from the database, some data we will take from the cache. So what is a cache? Cache is a location where we can store the data in the form of key and value. If your data is transactional data, then definitely our application should communicate with the database. For example, if your data is a static data, then why to get it from the database every time? That's where we are going to use cache. Cache is used to store and retrieve the data in the faster manner. If it is a database, driver is required, connection is required, statement should be created, query should be executed, connection should be closed, lot of things will work, lot of things will execute internally. So you know, right, when we are using data JPA, internally it will communicate with the Hibernate. Hibernate will communicate with the JDBC. JDBC driver should be loaded. JDBC connection should be created. Statement should be created. Query should be executed. Then connection should be closed. Results should be processed. Lot of code will execute internally, which will decrease performance of the application. So to avoid that problem in the real time, we are going to use cache. What is a cache? Cache is a temporary storage. Any data which is static, that means which is not going to modify in the future, that data we can keep in the cache. We no need to load that data from the database every time, again and again. Country names, if I retrieve country names 1,000 times, I'm getting the same data from the table because that is a static data. That is non-transactional data. So to deal with the non-transaction data, we should not go for the database. It will decrease performance of the application. So if it is a transactional data, then definitely we need to communicate with the database. If it is a non-transactional data, then instead of keeping that in the database, we will keep that in the cache. So instead of getting that country names from the database, I will get the country names from the cache multiple times. It will improve performance of the application. So every application will interact with the database to store and retrieve data. Every application will interact with the database to store and retrieve data. In DB, we will maintain data in the form of tables. I mean to say rows and columns will be available. DB tables are divided into two types, guys. One is called transactional table. Another one is non-transactional table. Okay. What is the difference between transactional tables and non-transactional tables? If our application is performing insert, update, delete operations in table, then it is called as transactional table. If our application is performing only select operation in the table, then it is called as non-transactional table. Transactional table and non-transactional table. Okay. So examples also have given. When student register in our application, then student details will be inserted to student details table, user details table, transactional. When student open register for a demo pop-up, it will display country name with the country code and enter mobile number. Here, country master table is available. So in our country master table, we are not going to insert the data and we are not going to update the data. It is just retrieving the data. If we retrieve countries data from table for multiple times also, the data will be same and unnecessarily multiple queries will execute and it reduces our application performance. So if I retrieve these country names for every user will go to login page. If they don't have account, register, they need to get the data for the dropdown. If 1,000 users open the registration page, 1,000 times I need to get the data, which will reduce performance of the application. So when we have this kind of scenario, then it's better to go for cache memory instead of communicating with the database. In the real time projects, database will be available and cache also will be available. When to go for database? If you want to deal with static data, then cache. If you want to deal with dynamic data, then we will go for database. Are you guys clear? Right. So if you want to implement such kind of cache, cache is a memory which is used to store the data in the key value format. Right? Cache is a memory which is used to store the data in the key value format. Okay. If our application is having a requirement to use the static data, then it is highly recommended to use the cache in that application. What is the advantage of going with the cache? Using cache, we can reduce number of DB calls and we can improve performance of the application. When the user is trying to register, I don't talk to database to get the data. I will talk to cache. So cache means it is a storage to store the data in the form of key and value. When the users are trying to register, country names I will get from the cache instead of getting from the database. Okay. So whatever the country's data is available, instead of getting from the database, I will get it from the cache. Instead of getting from the database, I will get it from the cache. So the number of DB calls will be reduced when we are using cache memory. Are you guys able to understand what is a cache and why we need to go for cache? Guys, are you able to understand what is cache and why we need to go for cache? Come on. What is cache and why we need to go for cache? Yes. What is cache and why we need to go for cache? Can anyone tell me? Can you unmute your mic and respond? What is cache and why we need to go for cache?
Instead of communicating database, we can get the data from the cache.
Yeah, cache is the temporary memory where it stores the data.
Cache is a temporary memory where it will store the data. What is the benefit of going for cache?
It can be improved for purpose of our application.
Without any transaction, we can retrieve the data.
Yes, without any transactions, we can retrieve the data. And
number of DB hitting
DB calls will be reduced.
Right.
Application performance increases.
Yes, I don't want to hit the database for same data again and again because DB call is a costly operation, guys. Costly operation means it will take more time to execute. So if you are making DB calls, then your application performance will be reduced. That means the page load time will increase. If you have a DB call, then your page will be loaded slowly, right? When the data is the same, why to load it from the database every time? Why to hit the DB? Suppose, for example, 1 lakh customers are registering in my application. So I want to get the country's data. 1 lakh times I will get the country's data by executing query for 1 lakh times. If I execute the query for 1 lakh times, data is changing or data is same?
Same
data is same. Then why to make 1 lakh DB calls? It's not required. So that's where we are going for cache. So what is cache?
First time we need to get the data from the database.
We will do that. We will do that. Okay. Cache is nothing but a memory which is used to store the data in the key value format. If our application having a requirement to use the data, then we can go for cache. Right. So here, guys, cache means it is a storage where we can store the data in the form of key and value. One of the most famous cache in the market, that is Redis cache. Okay. So Redis is called as a distributed cache. What is the meaning of distributed cache? If the data is available in the cache, multiple applications can access the data from the cache. So that's why that is called as distributed cache. Now I have a cache and I stored some data in the cache. Can two applications access the data from the same cache?
Yes.
Yes. Two applications can access the data from the same cache. That is called as distributed cache. So there is a data in our database. We will store the data into cache. Application 1 can read the data from the cache. Application 2 also can read the data from the cache. So in the real time, when we are developing microservice based applications, Redis cache will be available. Multiple microservices can talk to the same Redis cache and they can retrieve the data. Now today we are going to see how to set up Redis server and how to communicate with the Redis server by using Spring Boot application. Got it? I have given the steps clearly, guys. First, we need to download Redis server software. The Redis server software will be downloaded. Here you can go to download option. The Redis server software will be downloaded. Once you download the Redis server software, it will have a zip file. Currently, guys, in this system, I'm installing the Redis server and my application also will run in the same system. But in the real time, Redis server will run in the remote machine and our application will run in the another machine. Our application will connect to the Redis server, which is running in the different machine. But here I can't use two machines for our class. So I'm using a single laptop. In this laptop itself, I will install the Redis cache and I will develop my application and I will show you how my application will connect with the Redis cache. But in the real time, application will run in one server, one system. Redis cache will be available in the another system. We are going to establish that communication, right? So if you see here, already in my softwares, I'm having that Redis server. I'm having the Redis server. Redis server software is available. Once you extract the zip file of the Redis, then you can see here Redis server.exe. When you double click on this Redis server.exe, my Redis server started. My Redis server is running. So the default port number for the Redis server is 6379. It is 6379. So Redis server is running in my local system and the Redis server port number is 6379. So here Redis client also will be available. Redis CLI.exe, that is client.exe. So you can run the client also. See here 127.0.0.1:6379. That means this is a client machine. This is a client software which is communicated with Redis server software. Let me keep these windows side by side. Now you can see here two command prompts are available. In one command prompt, Redis server is running. Redis server is running on the port number 6379. And I opened that server by using Redis server.exe. When I execute Redis server.exe, my Redis server started. The default port number is 6379. And when I execute Redis CLI.exe, then you can see Redis client is started. Redis client is already connected to Redis server running in the same machine. If you want to check the client and server both are connected or not, let me type ping. When I type ping in this client, it is giving pong as a response. That is ping pong. Now you can see when you go for the Redis website also, they will give the same example. So this is a CLI. When you type ping, you will get a pong like this. If you want to store the data in the Redis, you can set the data by using set command. This is a key and a value. This is a key and value. Like this, you can set the keys and values in the Redis server. Set name. I'm giving something like that, Ashok. Like this, I'm able to store the data in the Redis server. This is a key and this is the value. Now let me go for keys. Let me go for keys. Error wrong keys now. Get name Ashok. Set name Ashok. Get name. I'm getting the Ashok. So this is used to store the data in the cache. This is the command that we are using to store the data in the cache. Set key and value. Get key. I'm getting the value. So like this, we can communicate with the Redis server by using this Redis CLI. Okay, now I want to develop one Spring Boot application. That Spring Boot application should be able to connect with the Redis server, and I want to perform some operations on the Redis server. So how can we connect with this Redis server? Redis server is running on 6379 port number. So this is in the same machine, guys. This is my Redis server. And here my Spring Boot application will be available. Using my Spring Boot application, I want to communicate with the Redis server. Okay, so this is Spring Boot application. Guys, observe carefully. This is an integration. How Spring Boot application will communicate with the Redis server. In the Spring Boot, they provided one starter called Redis starter, guys. How we are using web starter, JPA starter, mail starter, like that. Similarly, if you want to communicate with the Redis server, then you need to go for Redis starter. Okay, once you have the Redis starter, similar to the JDBC template, Hibernate template, REST template, there is a template called Redis template is available. There is a predefined class in the Redis starter that is called Redis template. By using this Redis template, I'm going to get one class called hash operations. By using hashing, I'm going to perform the operations on the Redis server. To get this, I'm going to get one object called Redis template object. Using this Redis template object, I'm going to get the hash operations. This hash operations provided methods to perform the actual operation. Like we have put method, get method, something like that. Put method, get method, delete method. So whatever the operations that you want to perform on the Redis server, those operations we can perform by using this hash operations object. This is a hash operations object I'm going to get by using Redis template. And there is one more class that we need to create, that is Redis connection factory. Redis connection factory is a class that is used to establish connection with the Redis server. Okay, Redis connection factory will be injected into Redis template. From the Redis template, I'm getting the hash operations. From the hash operations, I'm going to perform the actual operations with the Redis server. This is Redis connection factory. It is like a data source. So if you want to communicate with the database, then we are going to use data source object. If you want to communicate with the database, database URL. If you want to communicate with the database, database URL. Okay, guys. If you want to communicate with the database, then database URL, database username, database password that we need to specify. Are you clear? Are you guys clear with this? If you want to communicate with the database, then we are going to configure data source properties. Similarly, if you want to communicate with the Redis server, Redis connection factory object will be available. That Redis connection factory object we will be injecting into Redis template. Redis template will provide hash operations. Hash operations is providing the methods to perform the actual operations. Here, I will create my service class. My service class is going to communicate with this. And here, my controller class will be available. My controller class will contain the logic to deal with the request and response. I need to develop one application like this, and I will show you how Spring Boot application is going to communicate with this Redis server. I will take one controller. My controller class will talk to service class. My service class will talk to Redis template. Redis template will provide the hash operations. By using hash operations, I will call the methods to perform the operations with the Redis server. Guys, look at this diagram. In my application, I will take a controller. Controller will deal with the request and response. My controller will talk to service class, our service class. Our service class will use Redis template. Redis template will provide hash operations, and Redis connection factory class will be available. Redis connection factory class is used to establish connection with the Redis server. Currently, Redis server and application is running in the same machine, so we no need to set up any connection properties. Tomorrow, if Redis server running in the different machine, then we need to set up connection properties for Redis connection factory. Look at the diagram. Are you guys clear with this flow? Guys, we need to develop one application. In that application, we are going to implement these classes, right? Redis server is already running. It is running on the port number 6379. My application also will run on the same machine. Redis server running on the port number 6379. My application will run on the port number 8080. That is the default port of the Spring Boot embedded server. Port number 6379 default. Okay. My Spring Boot application will run on the port number 8080. So here I'm repeating once again, please observe. Redis server. Redis is a cache, which is famous cache in the market. It is used to store the data in the form of key and value. Now, to communicate with the Redis server, to integrate the Spring Boot application with the Redis server, Spring Boot people provided one dependency called Redis starter. In the Redis starter, they have provided one class called Redis template class. So if you have JDBC template. If you go for Hibernate template. Similarly, To communicate with the Redis server, this Spring Boot people provided a class called Redis template. For the Redis template, we need to tell where is our Redis server. That's where Redis connection factory comes into picture. Redis connection factory is a class which will represent Redis server details. Where the Redis server is available, that will be represented by Redis connection factory. That Redis connection factory object I will inject into Redis template. From the Redis template, I'm going to get the hash operations. Hash operations is used to represent the methods that you want to perform operations. It will provide the methods to perform the operations on the Redis server. I will have a controller. My controller will talk to service. Service will talk to Redis template. Redis template will talk to hash operations. Then it will perform operations with the Redis server. Are you guys clear with my point? Are you guys clear with my point? Shall we start the development, guys? Shall we start the development? Perfect. Go here. Let us create one application to perform operations with the Redis server. Server is already running. Spring Starter project. Let me take it as a 44 application. Spring Boot Redis app. Maven as a build tool. Next. Yeah, web starter, Lombok, dev tools. Then let me go for Redis. Spring data Redis. Okay, I'm going for Spring data Redis dependency. Advanced thread safe Java Redis client for synchronous, asynchronous, and retrieve usage. Supports cluster, sentinel, pipelining, auto reconnect, codecs, and much more. Messaging with the Redis. Click on next. Click on finish. Yeah, project creation is in progress. Go to the pom.xml and check for the dependency. Pom.xml file. Web starter is added. Dev tools added. Starter data Redis is added. This is the dependency which will provide some predefined classes in the Spring Boot to establish connection with the Redis server. Redis connection factory, Redis template, and hash operations, something like that. With this, our project got created. We are good. Then next one. So go to our application. We need to make some configurations. What are the configurations? We need to create Redis connection factory object. We need to create Redis connection factory object, which will decide where is our Redis server, which is used to connect with the Redis server. Got my point? And the next one, we need to specify Redis template and hash operations. Okay, so here I have given the step by step. We need to create the project with these dependencies. Then we need to configure Redis connection factory bean. Okay, the dependencies are available. Like this, you need to specify Redis connection factory bean, and you need to specify Redis template that you can perform some operations on that. Okay, for example, first let me go and create one model class, which data we want to store in the Redis and retrieve from the Redis. So I'm taking one model class with a name called user. Okay, so in this class, I will take some variables, ID, name, and email. Private integer ID, private string name, and private string email. Let me go for some setters and getters at the rate data. Let me go for some setters and getters, and let me use at the rate data, so that setters and getters will be available for this. And here I'm going to create one class. In this class, I'm taking a package. In this class, I'm taking in a package called config package. In this, I'm taking Redis config. So I want to represent this class as a configuration class. To represent this as a configuration class, I will go for @configuration annotation. @configuration annotation, I'm taking for this. @configuration. Redis config. Configuration annotation. Perfect. So this is a configuration class. Now in this class, I need to represent my JD's connection factory. Okay. So I will create the object and I will return the JD's connection factory object. That's it. Because I no need to set the host name, the password, the port number of the Redis. If Redis is running in the different machine, then I need to set the details for the Redis server like this. But currently, the Redis is running in the same machine, then I no need to set anything. Simply, I'm creating the JD's connection factory object and I'm returning that object from this method. So for this method, I'm writing @bean. That means IOC container is going to call this method. It will consider this class object as a Spring Bean object. Then I need to create Redis template. That Redis template I'm going to customize. In that Redis template, I'm going to inject JD's connection factory object. So as we discussed in the diagram, JD's connection factory object will be injected to Redis template. So here I'm creating Redis template. What is Redis template? Redis template is a predefined class in the Spring Boot that is used to establish communication with the Redis server. Got it. Now here I'm creating the object for the Redis template. Redis template dot set connection factory. So that means how to communicate with the Redis server. So the communication will be provided by JD's connection factory. So I'm passing that JD's connection factory object for the Redis template. And finally, I'm returning Redis template. Redis template is a predefined class. You can go for auto wiring wherever you want to use that. But here, I want to customize that Redis template. I want to tell to Redis template where is Redis server. That's why I'm setting connection factory. Redis template dot set connection factory, and I'm calling this method. What this method will do? This method will create the JD's factory object and it will return the JD's factory object. Guys, can you look at these two methods? These are two customized objects. @bean annotation, I'm writing at the method level. Why I am writing @bean annotation at the method level? IOC container will call that method and will consider that object as a Spring Bean object. Whatever the object that is returning by this method, right guys? I'm creating the JD's connection factory object and I'm giving Redis template object. I'm customizing them. Guys, are you clear? There is no business logic, just creating the object and returning the object in the first method. And in the second one, creating the object and setting the connection factory and returning the Redis template. That's it. So with this, we are good with what is the JD's connection factory and what is Redis template. Now, I'm going for service layer. I'm creating one service class as user service. You can create an interface and implementation, that is fine, but I'm taking just user service. In the user service, I'm taking one constructor, public user service. In this user service, I'm taking Redis template object as a parameter. Key is what? Here we have already given the key in the config. Key is a string, value is user. So string and user, that is the key, and value, that is user. Okay, user is our class, model class. I will call it as Redis template. Okay, so constructor. If I write only one parameter as a constructor, then auto wiring will happen. So to create the object for the user service, it has to pass Redis template object as a parameter. Redis template object we already customized by using Redis config class. Now, once we execute this constructor, Redis template will come as a parameter for this. Redis template dot ops for hash. I'm going to call one method that is called ops for hash method. Ops for hash method is returning hash operations class. So hash operations class is a predefined class that is available in the Redis core. Now, I will declare this variable outside of the class. Hash operations ops for hash is equal to null value that will be injected and will be stored into this variable. This dot ops for hash is equal to Redis template dot ops for hash. Are you guys clear? I created one class with a name called user. User class having some properties. It is just a normal class which is used to set the data and get the data. Here I created one class called Redis config class. In the Redis config class, I'm taking Redis connection factory. The Redis connection factory I'm injecting into Redis template, and I'm representing Redis template as a bean. And I'm taking user service class. In the user service class, I am taking Redis template as a parameter. From the Redis template, I'm calling ops for hash method. What is the meaning of ops for hash method? It will provide me hash operations. Key, comma, hash value, comma, object. Whatever the value that you want to store. This hash operations is taking three types of arguments. What are those three types of arguments? String, comma, object, comma, object. What are the string, comma, object, comma, object? So let me take it as a string, comma, object. String, comma, object. I will give this string as a key, and this is my hash key, and this is my value, that is my object. I'm going to use user here. So I want to store user data. For that user data, key will be available. Based on the key, I want to store that value. Can you look at this user service class? Are you guys able to understand what I am doing in the user service? Guys, come on. Are you able to understand what I am doing in the user service? I'm getting hash operations. This is a hash name. This is key and this is value. What is the hash name? Let me differentiate that. Here in the hash operations, there are three types of arguments available. One is hash key, another one is normal key, and another one is value. What is a hash key? For example, if I take users as a hash, in that 101 John. 101 is actual key, John is the value. Then 102. 102 is something like Steve. 103, it is something like Orlin. Okay, so users is called as a hash. Users is called as a hash. Similarly, if I take books, books is one hash. It's like a table name. In that I will keep 201 key that is related to Java. Okay, 202 key that is related to Python. 203 key that is related to DevOps. So like this, hash key will be available. Hash key is similar to our table name. Then we will store the data by using key and value. Here, 101 is the key, John is the value. 102 is the key, Steve is the value. 103 is the key, Orlin is the value. Here, these keys and value pairs are belongs to users hash key. 201 Java, 202 Python, 203 DevOps. These entries are belongs to hash key called book. So like this, we are going to store the data in the Redis cache. When we are storing the data in the Redis cache, that will be represented in the form of key and value. To group our keys and values, we are going to use hash key name. Okay. Now here, I am taking user service. In the user service, I'm taking hash operations. First parameter will represent hash key. Second parameter will represent actual key. Third parameter will represent the value. Here integer ID. So if it is integer, then here I need to take that key as a integer. I need to take that key as a integer. So this is user ID and this is user data. This is hash key. Now let me write one method, public string add user. I will take user object as a parameter. Then how to add that user? Already I'm having ops for hash. I'm adding ops for hash. Ops for hash dot put key comma hash key comma user value. Now I will keep this as users, and this key I'm going to keep it as user dot get user ID. User dot get user ID. The value is actual user object. Then I'm going to return as user added. I'm going to return that as user added. So ops for hash dot put method that is used to store the data. That is used to store the data in the Redis cache. It is used to store the data in the Redis cache. Ops for hash dot put hash key, right? User ID and user object. Similarly, I want to get the user record, right? Get user. To get the user, I'm going to pass user ID as a parameter. Then ops for hash dot get of key. What is the key that I'm using? Users, like that. And what is this? User ID. Okay. Ops for hash dot get of this. It is going to return user record. Return ops for hash dot get of users. So like this, you can get this data. Suppose if I want to get all the keys and values which are available in that, then I will go for public list of user get all users. Then we will go for ops for hash dot entries of key. What is the key? Users. Entries is the method which will give everything which is available in that. Map of integer comma user entries. I'm getting all the keys and values in the form of map. I'm getting all the keys and values in the form of map. Then what I will do? Return map dot values. Map dot values. I'm going to get collection of users. Then let me return that. Return of entries dot values. Util list I'm going to return. Collection of user. Okay. Collection of user I'm returning. I'm taking three methods, guys. One is used to add the user. Another one is used to get the user based on the user ID. Another one is to get all the users belongs to that particular key. So here I'm giving users as a key. You can use users, all the user details you can store with this key. You can store the books, all the books details you can store with that key, so that we can differentiate which data we are storing and which data we need to retrieve. So this is my class, service class, which contains the logic. When we are using database, service will communicate with the repository. Repository will communicate with the database. But currently, I don't have a database. My application want to communicate with the cache directly. So that cache is a Redis cache. That cache is a Redis cache. Are you guys clear? Are you guys clear? User service class, hash for ops. I'm taking Redis template as a constructor parameter, so that Redis template object will be injected. Using that Redis template, I'm taking ops for hash dot put, ops for hash dot get, ops for hash dot entries. Similarly, there are several methods available in the hash operations class. Okay, delete is available by using delete key method. then get is available, multi-get is available, collection of keys, increment, decrement, like that. There are several methods available in hash ops. There is a class which is used to perform operations with Redis server. Now, let me call these methods from controller. Let's go to project and create one controller. New class. I'm creating a class with a name called user controller. In this user controller, we can write the methods. They are used to store the data and retrieve the data by taking the request and send the response. So to represent this as a controller, I'm taking @controller. In this controller, I want to inject the service. Public user controller. In user controller, I want to inject user service. Let us declare a variable private user service, that is service. You no need to write auto wiring when there is only one parameterized construct. I'm writing service. That means whenever this user controller object is created, this controller will be called. This controller is expecting user service object. Now let me write some methods. Public string add. So it is taking user object as a parameter and it will call return service dot add user, pass the user object. Let me map it to post mapping / user. User data will come from request body. User data will come from request body, right? The user data we are taking, and that same user data we are passing to service method. Service method will talk to ops for hash, put key, hash key, and value. So I am adding data that is belongs to users. I'm adding the data that is belongs to users, right? Save it. This is post mapping to get the user. Now let me go for public user get user. So we need integer user ID. So that user ID I will take as a path parameter. Service dot get user with the user ID. So I'm mapping this to a get mapping, @get mapping / user and user ID. I want this as a path variable. So to take it as a path variable, I'm writing one annotation @path variable. So I'm writing one simple get request method. In that get request method, I'm expecting user ID as a path parameter. So to read the path parameter from the URL, I'm using path variable annotation. That user ID I'm passing to my service layer method. My service layer method will talk to ops for hash and will get the data based on the user ID. So what is this key? It is used to differentiate what type of data we are storing. Okay. Suppose if this key is not available, guys, suppose if this key is not available, can we differentiate which is user record, which is book record? No. That's why that key will be available. Key will be available. Okay, good. I want to get all the users. Then public list of users. Public list of users. Get all users. No need of any input. Then simply we will call return service dot get all users. So this method is returning a collection. Okay, get all users. So for that I'm writing one get mapping / users. So all the users I want to get it. Any confusion in our controller method? It's very simple. Just we are writing get request method, post request method. Post request method taking user data from the request body and it is calling our service layer method to add the user in the Redis cache. Here get request method is available. It will take user ID as a path variable and get the data from the Redis cache based on the given user ID. And users method is available. It is used to get all the users which we have added and return that. If you observe our diagram, the flow, controller is available. Controller having methods. Controller will talk to service. Service will talk to Redis template. Redis template is having JDIS connection and Redis template provided has ops, put, get, delete, entries like that. There are several methods available. Okay. So let me run my application and check it. Is it really working or not? Okay. Go to this debug as boot application. I want to run this project in the debug mode and I want to understand how it is working. Add method, get user method, get all users methods are available. Meanwhile, let me open my Postman to test this API. Really, is it communicating with Redis or not? My Redis server is already running, guys. I opened my Redis server. I opened my Redis server. My application is started. My application is started. It is failed. Class not found exception. Class not found exception. Redis client class is not available. Safe encoder. I think one dependency is missing. It is not able to start the project. Go to pom.xml. Check the pom.xml. We added starter data Redis. Any other dependency that should be added? We need to exclude this core dependency and we need to add Redis.clients dependency. Our application should act as a Redis client. I have given the dependency in the notes. Let me configure this. Earlier we added only starter data Redis. From that we need to exclude this core and we need to add Redis clients.jdis. Okay, let's try. Refresh this. Right click, debug as boot application. I'm running this project in the debug mode. Let us see. Last time it failed. Now it started successfully, guys. My boot application started. Okay, my boot application started. And here it is running on the port number 8080. Perfect. Go to the Postman. I want to send a post request 8080/user. I want to send user data in the body. That is ID, name, and email. ID, name, and email. ID, let me give it as something like 701. Name as something like John. Email ID, john@gmail.com. So I'm sending a post request, guys. I'm sending a post request with JSON data. Okay. So request will go to our controller method. Click on send. Request sent to the server. My controller has I did a mistake, guys. This should not be the controller. This should be the REST controller. It is not a controller. It should be REST controller because I'm returning objects directly. Okay, let me take this as a REST controller. I have started my application again. Clear the console. Let me run in the debug mode. Right click, debug as boot application. Application started in the debug mode. Go here, post request, user, body contains ID, name, email. Click on send button. Request sent to my REST controller method. See that? Am I able to capture the request body data? Whatever the data we are sending from the Postman, is it mapped to Java object or not? I'm using request body annotation to read the data into my Java object. Once I got the data into Java object, let's go to this service method. F5. Yes. In the service method, what I am doing? I am injecting Redis template object. I got the Redis template object and I got the ops for hash. Okay. I'm writing put method. User sees the key. This is hash key and value. User ID, whatever the user ID I'm passing, 701. User ID I'm using as key and user data I'm passing. this user ID and user data belongs to user's key. That is a group, right? Click on F6, it failed. F8, we got some exception. Let us check this. Default serializer requires a serializable payload, but received the object of type in.ashokid.model.user. Serializable payload. Okay. So I think we need to implement serializable interface from this binding class. Implements serializable. Terminate this. Implement serializable. Then go and run in the debug mode. Yes, again, I have started this application. Go here and click on send. Again, request came to this controller method. Controller able to capture the data from the request body. Go to our service layer method. I'm writing put method. Ops for hash put. F6. Finally, we are able to add the data to the Redis cache. F8. Now see, user is added. Now let me go for get request method / users. I want to get all the users which are available. Okay, let me get all the users. Click on send method. Request came to the get all users. Here I'm calling service.getAllUsers. Go to F5. Ops for hash.entries of users. Users is our key, which we are representing. Our data belongs to user data. If it is book data, I will give the key as a book. As I have shown you in the table, what type of data that you are storing, you need to represent that by using the key. Okay. Now, entries of users. So with this key, whatever the user records are stored, I want to get all those things. That is giving a map. Map I got with the key value. Entries.values. I want to get only values. Values are nothing but only users. So there is only one user record is available. Let us return that. Now you see, I got only one user record. Now let me disable this breakpoint. Now let me go for post request method. Let me add one more user. Body, I'm giving the ID as a 702 and I'm giving the name as a Smith and I'm giving the mail ID as smith@gmail.com. Click on send. User added. Go for get request users. So you see my application retrieving the users which I have added. I added John with 701 and Smith with 702. If you want to get the record based on particular ID /user /701. Okay, I should get only John record. Click on send. I'm getting only John record. If I give the ID as 702, I'm getting only Smith record. If I send users, I will get both users which are available. Similarly, you can delete the data, you can add the data, you can retrieve the data using Redis template. Redis template is a predefined class that is provided by Spring Boot. By using that Redis template, we are able to communicate with the Redis server. So currently Redis server is running in my machine. Tomorrow, if Redis server running in the different machine, in the Redis connection factory, you need to set the details of the Redis server. So your application will have a team who will maintain the Redis server. That team will set up the Redis server, will give the server details for you, and the remaining code we have to implement. Redis connection factory to establish connection with the Redis server. By using that, we are creating a Redis template and we are injecting that Redis into Redis template. That Redis template we are injecting into service. Using that, we are getting hash ops. Using that, we are calling the methods. Put method, get method, entries method. Similarly, we can call a delete method to delete the data. So if you see this diagram, then you will get to know what is the code that we have implemented. Now, we are able to perform operations with the Redis server. We are able to add the data and we are able to retrieve the data. Similarly, we can delete the data also. So generally what will happen, once our first time when our application is started, we will take the static table data and we will insert that into Redis server. Actually, our data will be available in the database. When our application is started, we will take the data from the database, we'll insert into the Redis server, and our application always will retrieve the data from the Redis only, not from the database, if it is a static data. You got my point? Yeah. Now, I'm open for questions. Anybody having any questions on this?
Sir, if server is stopped and started again, will it be retrieved?
Yes, sir,
Redis
it will
server.
retrieve. Yes, because so the data is stored in the Redis server, right? It will not be deleted from there. It is not in memory for our application, right? It
So
will
server
retrieve.
start means Redis server stopped.
Huh.
Order.
Yes, if Redis server is stopped, then the data will be lost.
Oh, okay.
If our application is stopped and started, then there is no issue.
Okay.
So
Redis
that
server I'm talking.
what we can do is in our application we can create one runner. What is runner in the Spring Boot?
Run
Yeah.
once
One
application.
time it will
Once,
execute. So whatever the static tables are available in our application, using runner, you can read the data from the database and you can insert into Redis server. So only one time data will be loaded to Redis server. So whenever your application want to read that data, instead of reading from the database, you can read it from the Redis server.
Okay.
You got it?
Yeah, got it.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, explain once a hex key, sir.
Sir, hash is simple, man. You have a database. In the database, how you will represent the data?
Primary
In my database, no. In the database, we will use the tables, right?
table. Yes, sir.
Rows and
If
columns.
I want to maintain the users data, I will create a table with the users table. I want to maintain the roles data, then I will maintain a table called roles table. I want to store the books data, I will create a table with a name called books table.
Yes,
So
sir.
are you going to insert all the data into one table, or you are separating your data into multiple tables?
Separating the data into multiple tables.
Multiple tables. In the table, again, what you will do? You will use the ID and name. ID is a primary key, something like that. You got it? Now
Okay,
here
sir.
you will use 1, and here you will use Raju, and here you will use 2, and you will use Rani. Okay. Similarly, here also roles will be available. ID will be available and the name will be available. ID 1 that is belongs to admin role. ID 2 that is belongs to user role. Something like this. Okay. Now ID name columns are same. Primary keys also same, but they are belongs to different tables. Similarly, when we are storing the data into Redis also, key and value will be available. But one group of data belongs to users. This data belongs to users. Now, you need to consider users is a table. Books is a table. So in the DB, we are calling it as a table. In the Redis, it is called as a key. All the user details will be stored by using users key. Like this, you can use any key, whatever you want. If you want to store the books data, you can store as a books, something like this. You got it?
Hello, sir.
Yes.
Sir, my question related to war file. Can I ask?
Yes, tell me.
Yeah, sir. I have created war file and I upload in Tomcat version. Tomcat.
For Spring Boot, as of in the latest versions of the Spring Boot, they are not supporting for the war. You need to make it as a jar.
Okay, sir. Because I did.
Because,
Suppose
the reason for that is Spring Boot application always will start from the main method. Okay, so that means whenever your application is starting from the main method, you need to package that as a jar file.
Okay. The same process after creating jar, paste in Tomcat. Then
Why you need to do that? Spring Boot itself is having a Tomcat now. You just need to run the jar. Embedded Tomcat will start.
Okay.
Okay. If it is a normal servlet application or Spring MVC application, then you need to package it as a war file. Then you need to deploy in the Tomcat web apps folder. For Spring Boot, why you need to do that? Already embedded server available now. If you create the jar, if you just run the jar, then embedded Tomcat will start.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
Sir. Yes, sir. Redis is a server, right, sir?
Redis cache. That means, so DB is available. We'll call it as a DB server. Na? So whenever you run that, database will start. Similarly, Redis server it is one software.
Okay. Which protocol it is using, sir?
Redis server, it is using 6379 port number. Protocol means I did not get you.
Protocol means, sir, while we connecting the database, na, TCP is there, na?
Here are same thing. Here also Redis server will be running on the different machine. Then through TCP protocol, it is going to connect to that.
Okay, okay.
So currently Redis I am running in the same machine, but in the real time, Applications will run in one machine, Redis will run in the different machine. Where you need to set the Redis connection properties in the JDIS connection factory object. Here I have commented those lines. In the configuration class, if you see, I have commented that. You need to get these details and you need to set. Then your application will connect to the Redis server, which is running in the different machine also.
We
When
don't
the
need
Redis server-
property files, sir.
Yeah, we'll keep them in the properties file and we'll load from the properties file.
Sir, Redis kept the data inside its own DB.
It
where-
will maintain its own data store, guys. We don't know what is its internal mechanism.
Okay, in memory type, like.
It's in memory type. It will have its own data. Generally, even if you go for database also, we will store the data in the database in the form of tables. But internally, how database will store the data? In the files.
Yes,
DBF
sir.
files will be available. Similarly, we are storing the data in the Redis server. Redis server will maintain its own memory internally. It may be a file to store our data. They will have their own structure. That is their business, right? Why they will disclose to us.
Yes, sir. Sir, can we use in Hypernet? Cache is there, na? Can we use Redis in?
Yes, you can do that also.
Okay.
Hibernate cache, it is just a session level cache, right? If your application is restarted, your session will be recreated. Then you will lose your data.
Okay, okay. Sir, somewhere I heard about Redis also using session management.
No,
No, sir.
I did not hear that. Okay. Cool, guys.
So if
Good.
you add some data, once you restart the application, again, we don't need to add the same data, right? It will be
No,
available.
we don't need to do that. We don't need to do that.
So in market, nobody is using a Spring cache.
Spring cache, that is different, sir. Redis is most famous cache in the market for microservice based applications because multiple microservices want to use same data. Then we will go for global cache. Suppose if you go for Spring cache, right? That cache will be specific to only one application.
Application level.
That is called local cache. Suppose I have some static data. I have taken the data from the database. I store it in the cache in my application. So that will be available only in one application. That is called local cache. I want the same data for multiple APIs in my project. Then we need to go for global cache. Global cache means cache will be available outside of our project. Multiple applications can connect to the same cache to get the data. You got the difference between Redis and Spring cache. Spring cache is application specific. That means only one project can use it. Redis
But
is distributed.
But we can also retrieve the dynamic data through the Spring cache, right?
We can do that. That is specific to one application. That is what I'm telling. It is specific to one application.
Okay.
Sir, suppose we want to update any value, sir. Let us say at some point of time, just one value we need, key value pair we need to update. Then we cannot do it in Redis cache, sir.
Can you come again?
Let's say we are having some 100 key value pairs. Maybe one key value pair we have to just update. Then
You can do that. General, it is a normal Java map concept, sir. So in the Java map, right?
Yeah.
Map
yeah.
dot put of 1 comma something like Raja that I'm using. Okay. If I do map dot put of 1 comma, if I use some Rani, then what will happen?
It'll update.
Same process here also. Whenever you go for Redis cache, you are using put method, right? So when you pass the same key for that put method with a different value, the old value will be replaced with the new value. You no need to write a separate method for updating, just put method. If you pass the same key with a different value, for that key, value will be updated. How it will happen in the Java map, same concept will work here.
Okay.
Hi, sir. In the case of WAR file, how do we maintain cache? Is there any mechanism to maintain cache for WAR files?
Can you come again?
I have a WAR file. I want to maintain cache. Is there any mechanism to maintain cache for WAR files?
Sir, cache is not related to WAR file or jar file. WAR or jar, that is just a packaging format of your application. So in your application, you can write the same code and you can package that as a jar or you can package that as a WAR. That doesn't make any sense with the Redis, right? Redis is a cache. We have the classes in our project. That project you can package as a jar file or you can package as a WAR file. Still your application can connect with the Redis. How it will make a difference if it is a WAR or jar with the code? It doesn't make any difference, right? WAR or jar is just a packaging format of your application.
Hello.
Hello.
Yes, sir. Because,
Yep, tell me.
sir, my company assigned me one task regarding to deployment. I have created one Spring Boot MVC project. Then I need to deploy to WAR file. That's why I asking you to how to create a WAR, then how to deploy, because already Tomcat is
I
there.
understand, sir. I understand your question. Now you asked the right question. How
Yes.
to deploy Spring Boot application to third-party server, not
Yeah.
to the embedded server. Then
Yeah.
you need to go to the pom.xml file. In the pom.xml file, whenever we add a web starter, by default that embedded server Tomcat will come. So you need to exclude the Tomcat from there, and you need to package a WAR file, and you need to deploy that WAR file into external server. First, you need to remove that embedded container dependency from the pom.xml. Then you can deploy that into the third-party server. Okay.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Hello, sir. Web.xml is required, no?
In the Spring Boot, it is not required, sir.
Sir, how it is
Even in the servlets, web.xml is not mandatory.
working without a web.xml?
Why web.xml is required? What is the purpose of that?
While coming first request, it mapping.
Not required. No, if you want to configure something in web, in the servlets, do you know that there is an annotation called @web servlet?
Okay, okay.
What is the purpose of that? That is used to map the URL pattern. Without web.xml also, you can run your servlet application. In the web applications also, that web.xml is not mandatory. It's optional. Because completely we are moved out from the XML and we are going with annotations.
Understood.
Good, guys. Thank you. So I will upload the notes for the Redis. So please practice this Redis before coming to tomorrow's session. Tomorrow we'll talk about Apache Kafka. Okay. Thank you.